In 1982, there was an article that came out in the Atlantic Monthly. It was titled Broken Windows. Have any of you heard of the broken windows theory? The article proposed this theory, which outlined the nature of how crime spreads in our society and in our communities. Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests, this evening I'm going to talk about two things. First of all, give you a thorough idea of the nature of this theory, the broken windows theory, and also, secondly, in the last half, I want to challenge you to think about the broken windows in your own life and how this theory might apply in terms of organization in our home and in our life. Allow me to first read you an excerpt from that article. Consider a building with a few broken windows. If the windows are not repaired, the tendency is for vandals to break a few more windows. Eventually, they may even break into the building. And if it's unoccupied, perhaps become squatters or light fires inside. Or consider a sidewalk. Some litter accumulates, soon more litter accumulates. Eventually, people even start leaving bags of trash from takeout restaurants there or breaking into cars. So in a nutshell, the authors of this article claim that these seemingly small, insignificant incidents could lead to bigger things. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book The Tipping Point, also talked about the broken windows theory that these guys had proposed. There were two criminologists named George Wilson and James Wilson and George Kelling. And he said that crime is the inevitable result of disorder. Crime is the inevitable result of this disorder. What is the impression that these passers-by have when they walk by this broken window? One, that no one's in charge, that no one cares, that anything goes. So one window leads to more broken windows. And then this might lead to the sense of anarchy being taken from the building outside into the street. Wilson and Kelling cited that because of this, small, minor problems, seemingly minor problems, like panhandling, like graffiti, like public disorder, could lead into bigger, or could invite more serious crime. The broken windows theory was invited to, or Kelling was invited to show the broken windows theory in action when he was asked to be a consultant for the New York City Train Authority in the mid-'80s. How many of you remember or have been to New York, went to New York in the mid-'80s, between mid-'80s and 1990? Anybody in here? So he was invited to be in on this big multi-billion-dollar renovation that the subway system was going on at the time. There was a subway chief that had just been hired, Greg Nunn, and he knew that Kelling would be able to focus in on the problem and be able to come up with bigger solutions. So at the time, there were $10 million trains that had just been bought, and they started out with something seemingly small, graffiti, taking care of graffiti. There were a lot of people who claimed that they had bigger fish to fry than graffiti. That wasn't the big problem. But they knew, Greg Nunn said that if they could start there, that was the cause of the collapse of the system. So one of the things they did was they decided that there would be no car that had graffiti on it that would be allowed to be in service on the rails. So for the stainless steel cars, they found a solvent that they used to remove the graffiti at night after the car had been taken out of service, and it wouldn't be put back in service until it had been cleaned. For those cars that were painted, they would paint over the graffiti and then put it back into service. And again, it wouldn't be put into service until everything had been cleaned. This graffiti cleanup took from 1984 to 1990. Quite a long time. And for those of you that remember the subway system in the mid-'80s until that time, it was quite a bit different from the year 2000, even when I used to ride it at 1 in the morning with no problem. As a result of that, the New York Transit Police Chief decided that he was going to follow the same idea. So using this theory of starting small and looking at those seemingly insignificant things, they started thinking about how to beat the fare beaters. So these people who were leaning on the turnstile and trying to get in, jumping over the turnstile without paying. They estimated that on average there were about 170,000 people a day who were going in without paying for a token. So again, they were thinking, there were a lot of critics who said, $1.25, you're going to go after these people for $1.25? Not only is it $1.25, but all of a sudden you're having to haul people into the station. There's so much paperwork involved in this. This is an entire process. It's going to take a long time. They decided to retrofit city buses, put them outside of the subway stations so that it cut down on the amount of time that they had to spend taking people in. And because of this, the entire process lasted only an hour. And what they found by going after these people, seemingly insignificant transgression, was that, oh, this guy has a gun, and this guy has a knife, and this person has a warrant out for their arrest. So it worked. So we've seen the way in which the broken windows theory can apply, or does apply, to the spread of crime in a community. But how can it relate to organization on a personal level at our home and in our lives? So take this example, daily ritual. How many of you go to check the mail? You come back from the mailbox, you're going through. Day 1. Day 2, same thing. All of a sudden, where there was one piece of mail, there is a pile of mail now. So what does this become? A broken window. I found that all of a sudden it's so much easier if you just open the mail over the shredder. Voila, the pile disappears. What about this? Especially ladies. Getting ready in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror. That's not going to work. Throw that down. Grab this other thing. It's not going to work either. What is this? A broken window. I started thinking about this because we think about these things in terms of one, but the accumulation of one is this and this and this and this and this and this, and physical clutter equals what? Mental clutter, which equals what? Stress. I talked to my friend Carla about this. Carla had a 400 square foot apartment in New York, which was always well maintained. The bed was always made. Nothing was out of place. Carla has the most hectic life of anyone I know. She works hard. She plays hard. And I asked her, how do you do this? And she said what our moms always told us. You take one thing out, you put one thing back. You get rid of mental clutter, you get rid of physical clutter, you eliminate mental clutter, and you reduce stress. So hopefully you can find a way to apply the broken windows theory so that it forces you to think about how to tinker with the little details of our environment that can lead to more productive spaces. Goodwill, half-price books, or consignment shops can help with this depending on what your broken window is. But here's to focusing on how to repair our broken windows so that we can add meaning to our life in ways that matter. Madam Toastmaster.